On our newscast tonight, in the last regular parliamentary session of 2014, bills aimed at improving the welfare system and fighting corruption are passed. The International Olympic Committee approves measures to hold select Olympic events at venues outside of the host country to help cut costs. Korea says that won't be the case for the Pyeongchang Winter Games in 2018. And global oil prices reach a new 5-year low, and experts expect them to dip even lower next year. Good news for countries like Korea that rely heavily on imports. Stay with us for these stories and much more.
Very good to have you with us. Welcome to Early Edition at 6 from our studio in Seoul. I'm Na Hyun-Gyeong.
And I'm Daniel Chet. Thank you for joining us. Let us begin at the National Assembly. It's the last day of this year's regular session, and lawmakers, they have passed some core bills that aim to improve the nation's welfare system and prevent corruption.
Right, some, but they still have bills pending, and those will likely be tossed over to an extra session slated for later this month. Kim Young-gil has this report.
Starting next year, families facing severe financial hardships will get more help from the government. The National Assembly passed 3 revised welfare bills Tuesday that will expand the scope of beneficiaries and put up a strong safety net for destitute families. The bills were proposed after a mother and her 2 daughters committed suicide in February in Seoul because of financial troubles. On top of the welfare bills, rival parties also passed an anti-corruption bill that will restrict public officials from getting new jobs for up to 3 years after they retire. It's intended to stem the long-standing practice of government officials taking jobs related to their area of purview after retirement, something that often leads to corporate malfeasance and negligence. Violating the law carries a possible punishment of 2 years in prison and fines of $18,000. However, the parliament has been dragging its feet on another anti-corruption bill that would set up stricter punishments for civil servants who receive bribes. It is still up for review in committee as lawmakers are at loggerheads on whether families of civil servants should be subject to punishment if implicated in a related bribery case. Lawmakers are trying to minimize any subjective interpretation of the bill. Another issue on hold is reducing lawmakers' privileges. Rival parties failed to come up to an agreement on a clause that will strip lawmakers of their immunity from arrest while Parliament is in session. It's a contentious matter that has been brought up nearly every election cycle for years, but there has been no real action so far. With the regular parliamentary session over, it is likely that the bill that would strip lawmakers of certain privileges will be taken up at an extraordinary session that opens December 15th. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Starting today, Korea and China together began patrolling Korean waters to see if Chinese fishermen are illegally fishing in the area. The patrols will take place for a week, but whether this will be effective in solving the chronic headache for Korean fishermen remains to be seen. Connie Kim has more on this development.
Illegal fishing in Korean waters has long been a thorn in the side of Korean fishermen, and Korea and China are now working together to do something about it. Over the next week, 2 patrol boats, one from Korea and one from China, will travel throughout the overlapping areas of the 2 countries' exclusive economic zones in the West Sea. They'll be stopping boats from their respective countries that are found to be fishing illegally. Once the patrol period ends on December 15th, Korea and China will exchange the information they've collected and discuss possible measures. Now, this comes after President Park Geun-hye and Chinese leader Xi Jinping agreed during summit talks in June to conduct a joint patrol of the area by the end of this year. It's expected that there will be 2 to 3 more inspections of the same kind next year. Korea's Oceans Ministry says that patrols are necessary and that measures currently in place are not effective in ending illegal practices by Chinese fishermen. Last month, the government announced plans to set up a special task force consisting of naval vessels and helicopters. They're also reviewing plans to confiscate unregistered Chinese ships. Over the past 5 years, more than 1,800 Chinese boats have been seized for illegal activities within Korea's exclusive economic zone. And it's estimated that about $1.2 billion is lost from illegal fishing every year. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
International aid to North Korea amounted to a mere $30 million last year, just 1/10 of what it was 10 years ago. A report released by the Korea Development Institute today notes a drop in aid by key donor countries such as South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. Now, the report says international aid to the North is declining not only in volume but also in the number of donor countries. As for the reason, the report blamed North Korea's lack of transparency about its food distribution system and the nutritional status of its people. Now, to give you some context, Pyeongchang received the most aid in 2002 with around $360 million. It received the smallest amount, $24 million, in 2010, following the regime's second nuclear test the year before.
Still staying on North Korea, a year has passed since North Korea executed Kaesong, one of the most important links between China and North Korea. Still, a chill is clearly felt between the two longtime allies. While some experts say this is natural as Pyongyang may have found a new friend, others speculate the relationship between the reclusive regime and China may return to what it used to be. Our Lee Ji-yoon has more on this report.
It wasn't welcome news for China last year when it heard North Korea's young leader Kim Jong-un purged his uncle Chang Song-taek. Chang was well known for supporting closer ties with China, especially for Beijing-backed economic reforms. A year has passed, but China and North Korea relations are still feeling the strain from Chang's execution. The number of political exchanges between the two countries has fallen sharply. In fact, in July, the Chinese president visited South Korea first, skipping a traditional stopover in Pyongyang. As for their economic ties, the two countries were looking to develop North Korea's Nasan and Hwanggeum-pyeong special economic zones. However, these projects also hit a major speed bump after Chang's death. In numbers, China's trade with North Korea dropped by about 3% in the second quarter of this year, although it still accounts for most of North Korea's foreign trade. As for North Korea's nuclear test threats, Beijing was unusually bold in its criticism. It agreed to tighten UN Security Council sanctions on the regime. But while North Korea may be losing China, it's making friends with Russia.
Despite criticism toward its nuclear program and human rights violations, North Korea is still managing to continue its diplomatic efforts with Russia.
Just last month, North Korea's top official Choi Ryong-hae was in Moscow to discuss trade and joint projects. But despite the chill in the air, experts say there's still a chance that China and North Korea could make up in the near future and be back on the same page again. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
We shift our focus to inter-Korean affairs. The joint industrial park, Kaesong that is, will celebrate its 10th anniversary next week. But some actually argue that the full potential of the joint business facility is not being realized, mainly because of political instability. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
In the 10 years since the Inner Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex first opened, operations have grown with more than 120 companies currently operating there. However, manufacturing output has been less than steady, stunted due to political and security instability. Last year, operations at the complex were halted for more than 5 months after North Korea withdrew its tens of thousands of workers amid diplomatic tensions. That slashed both output and the industrial park's credibility. Despite the limitations, South Korea has gained a direct economic benefit worth over $3.2 billion over the past 10 years from the venture, while North Korea's total comes to $380 million. That's according to a new report from the Hyundai Research Institute. But it also talks about the unrealized potential of the complex. The industrial park currently measures about 3.3 million square kilometers in size, which is just about 5% the size laid out in the original plan.
Most operations at the complex center now focus on simple processing. The next phase should focus more on high-value added industries like heavy chemicals and tourism. The final phase would aim to become an economic hub of Northeast Asia.
The institute adds that should operations at Kaesong ever approach the final phase of the development, the venture could bring in over $68 billion worth of benefits for both Koreas. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And now on to another inter-Korean business project. This one is suspended for now, though, the Mount Kunggung tourism project. A team of inspectors from South Korea's Hyundai Asan company left for the Mount Kunggung resort in North Korea this morning to check on facilities there. The three-day trip comes less than a month after Hyundai Group chairwoman Hyun Jung-un visited the north to celebrate the 16th anniversary of the project. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the visit is intended solely for routine maintenance work and that there will not be talks on restarting the tours. The project was suspended in 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot dead near the resort by a North Korean guard.
It takes a lot of money to hold international sporting events, and that's why the International Olympic Committee approved a reform plan that will allow select Olympic events to be held in venues outside the host country or city to cut costs. The changes could be effective as of 2018 when Pyeongchang hosts the Winter Games. But Korean officials are eager and willing to eliminate that possibility. Our Shin Se-min has more.
Thank you. Also, this is unanimously approved.
In one of the most significant shakeups in its history, the International Olympic Committee has approved a measure to allow some events to be held in other cities or even other countries to spread out the financial burden of hosting the world's premier sporting event. The IOC hopes to move part of its package of reforms known as Olympic Agenda 2020 will encourage more countries to make bids or joint bids to hold either the Winter or Summer Games. Meeting in Monaco on Monday local time, IOC members also agreed to limit the Games to 10,500 athletes in 310 events. The IOC will also scrap its cap of 28 sports in the Games. This means popular sports like baseball, karate, and squash could make a comeback in time for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. The IOC decision could have major implications for 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, as the organization has suggested the organizers move the sledding sports to another country as a cost-cutting measure. The Pyeongchang Organizing Committee, however, says it has no intention of switching anything, as construction of stadiums and facilities has already begun. One option that's been suggested is splitting the event with Nagano, the host city of the 1998 Winter Games. Pyeongchang organizers say splitting the Olympics with Japan is very unlikely given the frosty relations between the two nations over historical and territorial issues. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyun-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Sony has been hacked again. This time it wasn't their studio in Hollywood, but the online PlayStation network. A group of hackers claimed responsibility for that attack, while another hacker group is calling on Sony not to release the movie called The Interview. Here's our Connie Lee with more.
It's another hack attack on Sony. The company's online PlayStation store is up and running now, but it was down for a few hours on Monday with this message greeting visitors. It's not you, it's the internet's fault. Hacker group Lizard Squad has claimed responsibility for the attack, posting its achievement on its Twitter feed using the PlayStation Network acronym. The latest attack comes shortly after another group of hackers paralyzed the computer systems of Sony Pictures. The Hollywood firm suffered a massive data breach with its servers shut down and tons of confidential information leaked, including a handful of unreleased movies and the social security numbers of employees. And now the group of hackers who claimed responsibility for this is demanding that Sony not release the interview.
You want to go kill Kim Jong-un?
Totally. An upcoming comedy film centering on North Korea. On the code-sharing website GitHub, the group of hackers, calling themselves the Guardians of Peace, said Sony could face war if the movie is not pulled. Many reports claim North Korea was behind the cyber attack on Sony Pictures as retaliation for the movie. But the communist state denies any responsibility, although it did call the hack a righteous deed. Meanwhile, Lizard Squad, the hacking group that took down PlayStation's site, has warned of more attacks this month. The FBI has also warned other companies to be on alert, as they too could be targeted. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, the United States is on alert against possible backlash from the release of a Senate report on the interrogation techniques used by the CIA. White House spokesman Josh Earnest said Monday that the administration had taken prudent steps to ensure security at possible targets while also expressing support for the release of the report.
That's what was necessary in order to try to save his life. The administration strongly supports the release of this declassified summary of the report. The president believes that on principle, it's important to release that report so that people around the world and people here at home understand exactly what transpired.
Now, the document, which is a near 500-page summary of the Senate report, is said to contain details of the CIA's treatment of detainees and methods used to extract information in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. Publication of the report has been delayed amid disagreements in Washington over what should be made public. South Korean judge Chung Chang-ho has been elected to serve as a judge at the International Criminal Court. The 48-year-old was voted in on Monday local time at the UN headquarters in New York and will serve as one of the 18 judges at the ICC. Mr. Jung passed the Korean bar exam in 1990, served as a senior judge at the Gwangju District Court, and has been serving as a judge at a special tribunal in Cambodia since 2011. Now, with Monday's decision, South Korea will now have 2 judges at the ICC.
It's only been a couple of weeks since global oil prices tumbled to a 4-year low, but it has taken another step down. Prices went down to levels not seen since 2009 on Monday, and experts predict it will go even further down next year. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Global oil prices tumbled to a 5-year low Monday following projections of a steeper downward trend next year. West Texas Intermediate oil fell 4.2% to finish at just over $63 per barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. That's the lowest it's been since July 2009. The benchmark Brent crude also fell more than 4% to $66.19 a barrel, its lowest level since September 2009. This comes after the chief executive of Kuwait's national oil company said Brent crude prices are expected to hover around $65 per barrel for the next 6 to 7 months. Morgan Stanley also expects prices to slump for some time. Last week, it cut its average 2015 Brent base case outlook by about 30% to $70 a barrel, adding that prices could plummet to as low as $43 a barrel at some point. Global Bank UBS estimates that every $10 drop in oil prices will add around 0.2 percentage points to global GDP. And those expected to benefit the most are countries that rely heavily on oil imports, such as Korea, India, Japan, Germany, and China. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
From Red Report, we move on to another story that gives us some reasons to frown and be worried about. We've been reporting about the weakening Japanese yen for months now, yet we are talking about it again today. Analysts forecast this trend will continue next year, And it's not welcome news for Korean exporters at all. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
The Japanese yen is weakening twice as fast as the Korean won, raising concerns Korean exporters will continue losing their price competitiveness in global trade. Since the start of the year, the yen has tumbled 13% against the greenback, while the Korean won dropped 6%. It's believed the different pace of recovery in Japan, Korea, and the United States is being reflected in the exchange rate. Japan recorded negative growth for 2 consecutive quarters, leading up to the period ending in September. In contrast, the U.S. posted its strongest growth in more than a decade in the July to September period. The recovery of the Korean economy has been lackluster, but with the country reporting a balance of payments surplus for the 32nd consecutive month in October, the Korean won's fall against the greenback has been limited. The current exchange rate trend is forecast to continue throughout next year as well. Overseas investment banks tracked by Bloomberg forecast the Japanese currency to weaken more than 2% next year, when the Korean won is expected to weaken a mere 1% against the U.S. dollar. Some economists expect Korean exports to drop next year if the won continues to strengthen against the Japanese yen. A report by the Hyundai Research Institute last month said Korean exports will drop by 9% if the Korean currency trades at an average of 9 won against the yen. The won is hovering around 9.2 to the yen, the highest level in 6 years and 9 months. Kim Chang-bae, a senior researcher at the Korea Economic Research Institute, says it's imperative the Bank of Korea cuts the key interest rate to keep the local currency from appreciating more against the yen. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And now shifting our focus to cultural front, Korea's handmade traditional paper called hanji is known for its delicacy, and as a matter of fact, it used to be considered one of the finest papers and qualities of paper in Asia in the past.
That's right, and our Im Yoon-hee takes us to a special exhibition featuring some products by one artist who creates works of art using hanji.
Each strand hand-twisted, then woven together with hundreds of other strands. Artist Lee Young-soon is a master of Kaesong, the art of traditional Korean paper weaving. It's an art that isn't found very often nowadays, but like the generations of artists before her, Lee is determined to preserve and pass on the tradition.
I must strive for well-being so that I can maintain the art and conserve it for future generations. That is my hope.
The Seoul Museum of Art is currently hosting a solo exhibition of Lee's works, featuring rows and rows of beautiful masterpieces, artfully handmade, down to every last detail. And aside from the more traditional woven forms of baskets and jars, Lee has also embraced the contemporary, creating unique Kaesong works. While Kaesong served a practical role years ago, today it's a highly prized skill, with only a handful of true masters left in the field. Whether it be a jar and a lid or a small duck figure, Lee's works will be recognized for years to come with the magnificence and detailed work she has committed to producing. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Whether you're indoors or outdoors, it's really dry here in Korea.
Yes.
Maybe some snow can change things up a little bit.
Really? Snow can change the dry weather conditions?
I'm hoping.
All right, well, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center for details. Michelle.
Good evening, and like you just mentioned, starting tomorrow, snow is actually in the forecast to fall all across the nation, and it will start in Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollado provinces during the day and then expand over the whole nation by the evening, lasting until late Thursday night. And we are expecting less than 1 centimeter of snow for most regions, including here in Seoul, while up to 5 is expected near Gangwon-do provinces, excluding the coastlines. And looking further ahead, another round of snow is expected to fall on Friday and Saturday on the west side of the peninsula, which will bring down our temperatures once again, putting our morning lows way below the freezing point. And now to our readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Wednesday morning at -4 degrees before reaching up to 5 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will reach up to 7 and 11 degrees. And moving over to other regions such as Jeju Island will peak up to 15. Dokdo hits lower at 9 degrees, while Kunggung reaches the same as today at 0 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's today's early edition at 6 for you. Do you have a great start to your day or a safe drive home? This has been Daniel Chen.
And I'm Na Hyun-kyung. We'll be back at the same time, same place tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.